Good morning, Kahal Kadosh, Beruchim Habayim to everybody. Today, the 30th day of Adar 1, first day of Rosh Chodesh Adar, the second, corresponding to March 3rd, 2022. Today's class graciously sponsored by Mr. Albert Dweck and family for the Refuah Shelema of Dr. Eliftiha Eliyahu ben Rachel among the Holim of Am Israel. Additionally, today's class graciously sponsored by Rabbi Shaul Kassin of the West Deal Synagogue, as well as Mr. Ralph Braha, in honor of the rabbi and the congregation of the Edmond J. Safra Synagogue in Aventura, Florida. Tiskela Mizvot to the great rabbi and Mr. Braha for such a kind gesture towards us. Needless to say that we continue praying and learning and increasing in good deeds and tzedakah, obviously for the well-being of our brethren in the Ukraine. As yesterday we mentioned, an email was sent out as well as WhatsApps to many of our groups and chats and class recipients to participate in conjunction with the Sephardic Heritage Museum that is coordinating the relief efforts at a financial and physical level to the thousands of Yehudim stranded in that part of the world that is unfortunately affected by an event that who would have thought that we talk about war and evacuations of thousands of Yehudim to countries and obviously going to Eretz Israel. So it's fascinating that if we look retroactively, very close to Purim, I believe 2 years ago, we needed to deal with a visitor by the name of COVID that hopefully he's ready for retirement, but he created havoc and changes in people's lives. Fast forward 2 years later, COVID is behind us, and what do we have? We have a war that has all kinds of side effects at every single level. Don't think for a moment that the war in that part of the world, it doesn't affect us. It affects us in many, many levels, some of them which are obviously the situation with thousands of Yehudim. You can overlook the fact that poverty is rampant to a certain extent. Orphanages are full to capacity, something that perhaps in this part of the world we barely heard of a Jewish orphanage. But if you look online and you go to the kosher websites that they are providing information and live video feeds, you see how challenging the situation is in that part of the world, but how more dangerous and challenging it has become with the onset of the war. But as we said in the beginning of the war, Hashem ish milchama, Borei Olam has many different ways of running the world, and one of them is also the concept of the wars, the milchama, as we say in our daily prayers, Hashem ish milchama. God is the master of the wars, Hashem Shemo. So we hope and pray, like in Purim, we began in a challenging situation and we ended up in a very pleasant and successful and victorious way. So Be'ezat Hashem, may this war come to an end and everybody is safe whatever it's supposed to be. But we cannot overlook the fact, as we say in our daily prayers, Mekabes Nidhe Hamo Israel. This is another pop-up that's happening in human history, that overnight Borei Olam is asking or telling or forcing perhaps thousands of our brethren in that part of the world to pack their bags, which if you look at the videos, no one came with bags. They came empty-handed. We don't see any luggage, maybe a carry-on bag, and that's the most that they were carrying. What a wake-up call and message of Borei Olam, as the Pasuk writes in the Navi, Teshuat Hashem ke'eref ayin. The redemption of the Almighty can happen like the blink of an eye. So we hope and pray that everybody remains safe and healthy, and Be'ezat Hashem, with the arrival of the Rosh Chodesh Adar, which we know that the Halacha already wrote in the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch, Mishenichnas Adar Marbim Besimcha, with the arrival of the month of Adar, we increase in happiness and joy. There is a very interesting Gemara that we learned together in the past. One Gemara says, Sha'arei dim'a, Sha'arei tefillah nin'alu. Many times a person does tefillah and it's like it goes to voicemail. Nobody's picking up the phone, so to speak. The gates of prayers are shut down. The next Gemara says, Sha'arei dim'a lo nin'alu. The gates of tears. A person prays mima'amakim. A person prays from the bottom of the heart. A person prays with a certain level of anguish, so to speak. The Gemara writes that tefillah, or that anguish, or that bitterness or crying that a person may feel at that moment guarantees the delivery of the prayer. But as you heard me quote in the past, the great Baal Shem Tov, which based on what I read yesterday, it is interesting to know that many hundreds of families, and you have to understand, if you're saying hundreds of families, it doesn't mean only 200 people. It means husband, wife, 4 children. So bottom line, I read something yesterday night that says that somehow, some reason, the Baal Shem Tov resting place in the city of Mishbush in the Ukraine, which is approximately 2 hours from Kiev and from Uman, give or take, even more from Uman, every single room available in that Jewish enclave is completely taken, literally. So what the Baal Shem Tov says, now the Baal Shem Tov again became very famous even for the news. You know, they show in the video of the Ohel of the Baal Shem Tov in Mishbush, the Baal Shem Tov says, it is true that the gates of prayers are often closed. It is true that the tears can open the gates, but it says the Baal Shem Tov, Simcha, happiness, Pores Geder, breaks down the barrier. And although 30 days ago we started in the topic of Simcha, because at the end of the day, the halacha does not make a difference, Adar Aleph or Adar Bet, but for practical halachic purposes, Adar Aleph, it's about to retire in a few hours today, and effective tonight. This is when the first of Adar Bet starts the clock ticking. And now we're coming into the real month of Adar, which is the real month of Simcha. That's the reason why I'll speak about a tradition which is popular in certain circles, and even some new Sephardic Sidurim, they bring this concept, and has to do with the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. At the end of the day, today is the first day of Rosh Chodesh Adar, and we know that the day of Rosh Chodesh, it has like a reset button that enables us to turn the page and to begin a new chapter in life. In the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh, and this is brought down by the Bnei Issachar, but it's actually based on Kabbalistic writings, and it says that every month of the Jewish calendar, there is a combination of 4 words of a pasuk, and these 4 words, each one contains 4 letters of Hashem's names. There are 2 combinations of Hashem's name, Yod Ke Vav Ke, and the second one is He Vav Yod Ke, Havaya or Yod Ke Vav Ke. And it says that every month, when a person comes to the Musaf, and it says the Beracha, Baruch Ata Hashem Mehadesh Chodashim, every month when a person says Hashem's name in that blessing, you need to imagine yourself the vowels that correspond to the pasuk of that particular month, and based on that, When you say Baruch Ata Hashem, you are mechaven. And every month there is a different combination of pasuk and the vowels of the pasuk that we transfer them over to Hashem's name. Every month we have. Now, if this is based on the Jewish calendar, there are 12 combinations of pesukim. But what happens when the Shana is me'oberet? What happens when the year is like now, is a leap year, and that's why we in our Musaf, we add Ul-Khaparat Pesha. Whenever is Shana me'oberet, we add these two words in the Musaf. If you prayed Musaf today, check it out, and you'll see exactly what I'm saying. So it says that in the month of Adar Bet, what kavanah do we have when we say Hashem's name in the beracha of the Musaf? Short answer. All of the calendar, the 12 names of the previous month with the vowels, this is the kavanah for the month of Adar Bet, which is a fascinating concept. So what does it mean? That all the power of the year, it comes down to these 48 hours of Rosh Chodesh Adar Bet. And now, how do we reach that level of Kedusha and Tahara and growth? I think the Shulchan Aruch answers, Marbim besimcha. When simcha, it's added to the person's life, as David HaMelech writes in the book of Tehillim, Ibdu et Hashem besimcha. So then in that case, simcha keeps away a lot of darkness, a lot of yeush, a lot of atzvut. And obviously, Shlomo HaMelech even says it, Beshibachti ani et simcha. Why do I speak about simcha today? I think because it's Rosh Chodesh Adar, and we need to be happy. And I'm sure that everyone, without exception, truly is very concerned about what is happening in the Ukraine, in the war, etc. But Haz v'Shalom, that we allow this to bring down our spirit. The opposite. We need to count the miracles that are happening every Yehudi, every family, every child, every person, every Lubavitcher Shliach, every Bukharian or Gruzini rabbi or Yeshivish rabbi that is, or Hasidic rabbi that is able to cross the borders with their members, with their families, with the students, with their friends. You have to look at it as Yesiat Misraim. For them, this is the 21st century of Yesiat Misraim. The only difference is that Yesiat Misraim, people left with a lot of beracha and a lot of good things, are not out of war. But unfortunately, this is the sample of Yesiat Misraim for our day. So Yiratzon, that Be'ezat Hashem, with the onset and arrival of Adar Bet, that Be'ezat Hashem, like Bnei Israel, experienced the Nisim Meniflaot in the time of Mordechai and Esther, that we also have the zechut of having the Yeshua, the Geula, B'mera v'yamenu, Amen. Don't worry, I'm not done. This was the introduction to today's class, which will be a bit shorter than usual, since Be'ezat Hashem very soon I'm heading back home. So I say thank you to the New York audience and crowd for the warm hospitality provided and the warm welcome that I received in these past few days. I like to go back to some of the ideas that we discussed yesterday towards the end of the class. You remember we quoted the Musar from the Sha'arei Kedusha that brings the different mitzvot that a person does, and the Gemara, or rather the Mishnah, concluded that although every single one of these mitzvot that we discussed yesterday are important and essential, Talmud Torah keneged kulam. Says the Talmud Yerushalmi, there's the essence of Torah learning is supersedes a mitzvah. Why? Because there are two ways of doing a mitzvah. If a person does a mitzvah that it is connected to the learning, or the person does the mitzvah the way the Navi writes, Mitzvat HaNashim Melumada. What is the meaning of Mitzvat HaNashim Melumada? Basically, the person does the mitzvah, but he does the mitzvah in a robotic manner, so to speak. He does this, he does that, because that's what he saw his father doing, that's what he learned in bar mitzvah lessons, and chalas, stop counting. That's mitzvat anashim melumada. But the Talmud Yerushalmi says that when a person learns Torah, then the mitzvot can be done in a much more meaningful and enhanced way than a person who just goes with the flow and does what everybody else does. So at the end of the Musar of today, it says as follows, that a person, of yesterday rather, that a person not only takes the Torah when it comes to the performance of the mitzvot, but even when a person is not involved doing mitzvot, which is very difficult to find yourself in a situation that you're not going to be doing some mitzvah. Even in the world of business, when a person goes to work, how many halachot are written about the world of business? In the Hoshen Mishpat, if it's a loan, if it's a collateral, if it's a rebit, if it's interest, or heter iska, or paying salaries on time, or treating employees and customers with the proper kavod, with the proper respect, with the proper derecheres, as the Gemara in Shabbat writes, nasata venatata be'emunah, when you're honest in your business dealings. Now, the only way that a person can truly achieve that level of emunah in the world of business is when a person is aware of the halachot which are applicable when a person goes to work, including the laws of mekach umimkar, the laws of selling and buying, beyomot iten secharo, a person paying the salary to the employee is actually fulfilling a mitzvah ta'aseh from the Torah, that you pay the salary in a timely manner. The Zohar goes further. The Zohar says something fascinating about this mitzvah. The Zohar Kadosh writes that when a person pays the salary of the employee, it's not only paying the salary. Okay, you work X amount of days, or you work X amount of hours, here is your paycheck. The Zohar Kadosh says the following: when a husband or a worker comes home and there is money in the home for food, for expenses, I know that inflation is affecting everyone and salaries remain the same, but we need siyata d'shmaya to stretch out as much as you can. But let's not talk about the economics today. The Zohar Kadosh says very simple, that when there is parnasah coming into the home, that has a certain direct benefit in the shalom bayit that exists in the home. And let's be honest, how many issues of shalom bayit happens because parnasah is not coming on a regular basis, or people have a expensive taste or high maintenance lifestyles, and nothing will be enough. But the Zohar Kadosh goes to the other extreme and it says, but if the employer has the means and has the opportunity to pay and tell the worker, I'll pay you on Monday, don't worry, use your credit card, that will definitely cause certain issues of shalom bayit. And who is liable for that shalom bayit headaches? The fellow who had the means to pay and he didn't pay on time. And you have to understand, when the Zohar Kadosh was written, credit cards and Venmo and Zelle and Cash App and transfers didn't exist. You just needed to have. So if the employer doesn't have, honestly speaking, has nowhere, because sometimes people say, I don't have for you, but I have for me. So this is where honesty needs to come into play. But let's go to the worst case scenario. If the employer comes and tells the worker, you know what, I know I have to pay you today, but unfortunately, I don't have funds clear, for example. I'm only going to get paid on Monday, so I can pay you on Monday. So then the person is ready, the person is prepared, and will handle it, hopefully, in a good way. But if out of the blue, no money is coming in, and the attitude given, it's not the proper one, that also affects the life of the person. And therefore, the Zohar Kadosh write the Musar of today comes from Sha'arei Kedusha, and it says, Beyoshev, Bekore, Beshone, Bechol Yom Tamid. And that's the reason why Sha'arei Kedusha says, we learned yesterday. Why do we learn today? Because learning requires continuity. I could have said, I'm traveling, I'm out of town, I'll resume the class when I come back. But you and I know that is not good for either one of us. First of all, we have the Seder, we have the Kevi'ot Eitim, because at the end of the day, if you remember that Gemara that I mentioned before, honesty in business, what the next question the Gemara asked, Kavata Eitim la Torah, did you set up times to learn Torah? So you setting the time for me, I'm setting the time for you, we're helping each other. And it says, Umiyad. So what is the benefit for a person who has this, let's call it discipline, to learn Torah on a daily manner, even a few minutes? Believe me, it's all profit. The Sha'arei Kedusha says, Miyad zoche ruach hakodesh shore alav. Suddenly, the person will be receiving a spirit of Kedusha. Now, I don't know exactly what it means. It doesn't mean nevu'ah, doesn't mean prophecy. We have no prophecy today. And even when prophecy existed throughout our history, was only in Eretz Israel. We are outside of Israel, so there is no prophecy. But Ruach HaKodesh means like a spirit of Kedusha, of Tahara, of holiness and godliness that a person feels inside of the person. And how that was activated. How was that activated? So it says in Sha'arei Kedusha, since we learn Torah on a daily basis, so that activates a stronger connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. But it says the Musar of today, instead of the person doing all these good things that we are mentioning today, the person doesn't learn, the person Yoshev Batel, the person doesn't do nothing. So what's going to be happening? His actions are affected by the lack of Torah learning. His behavior will be suitable for someone who doesn't learn Torah, and that's when the person gets themselves spiritually into trouble. And therefore the Musar of today writes, and it says that a person needs to understand. If you remember, in the past, we quoted a great pasuk by Shlomo HaMelech, alav shalom. Shlomo HaMelech, alav shalom, wrote, Bechol derachecha da'ehu, behu yeyasher orchotecha. Literally means, Bechol derachecha, in all your ways, da'ehu, you get to recognize Hashem. Behu yeyasher orchotecha. And Hashem will straighten out our pathways. What does that mean? I think what Shlomo HaMelech is trying to tell us is that there is no such a thing as a person can separate from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. You can't get divorced from Hashem. Yeah, you can get divorced. When you throw the Torah away, Haz v'Shalom, and you live like a goy. Yeah, that's throwing God away. But in a normal way, which I think that if you are tuning in to itorah.com, or you're a recipient of our classes via WhatsApp or via email, so it means that you have a good connection with Hashem. So Shlomo HaMelech says, in every single situation in your life, there is room for godliness. Every imaginable situation, from A to Z, waking up in the morning till going to sleep at night, every imaginable situation that you come across your life, eating, drinking, taking a shower, going to the bathroom, business, marriage, education, supporting the wife and children, even the private time between husband and wife. In every single scenario of a person's life, there is room for a Kadosh Baruch Hu. If we let Hashem come in, if we look for Him, guaranteed that He will hold our hands the way we discussed in the past. Okay, since I'm getting ready to fly back soon, I believe that I will stop the class right here. but perhaps I can quote a short paragraph of the Sha'arei Kedusha that quotes an interesting Gemara from Masechet Megillah and about the Rabbi Natan. So, what about godliness in the way that a person speaks? Because at the end of the day, speaking is part of life. But obviously, as we learned in the beginning of the week, we discuss filtering, right? We discussed the filter. So the Mishnah, actually the Gemara quotes in Masechet Megillah, and it says, Mila besela shetikuta bitrin. What does it mean? It says there was a town that they used to count the amount of words that a person said throughout the day, and they used to give the person a coin. But they used to calculate also how many words the person could have said and did not say them, and they would give the person 2 coins. Why the Gemara brings this concept? The Gemara actually the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, talks about Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol yamai gidalti ben hachamim. Every day, or most of my life, I was raised among the hachamim. And they ask him, so tell us, what did you find something special that you learned from the hachamim? And it says, Lo matzati laguf tov mishetika. It says, I did not find a best benefit to the life of the person like silence. Doesn't mean not to talk, but it means that before we speak, we think and we filter what we are going to say. As the Pasuk writes in Megilatecha, Yeshev badad beidom, iten be'afar pihu. It says 2 things. It says, better sit down by yourself and stay quiet, or when your mouth opens up, put earth inside of it so you don't speak. Obviously, don't try this at home. Don't put earth in your mouth. I think what the Megillat Echa is trying to tell us is that even when it comes to the person speaking, that filter needs to be activated, as we find from Shlomo HaMelech, from the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, and the final word from Kohelet. Kohelet says in the chapter 5, Pasuk Aleph, Al tebahel al picha. It says, don't excite your mouth. What does it mean? It says, when your mouth needs to open up to say things, don't be with behala. Don't do it out of desperation. Don't do it in a hurried or rapid way. But then you're going to have to bring it back. And we already learned in the name of Sefer Hasidim, I believe, that as long as the words stay inside of the person, we are in charge of the situation. Once the words come out, we become the avadim of our words. And the Gemara even brings a question, I think, in Masechet Hulin, that says, Ma'u manuto shel ha'adam ba'olam hazeh. Tell me what's my life mission. And the Gemara says, Yasim atzmo ke'ilem. It says, make yourself deaf and mute. Interesting. 2 weeks in a row, the Musar quotes the same concept. So it must be that this is an area that we must work on the matter. And it says that, what does it mean, making yourself deaf and mute? Mute in order not to speak too much, but deaf also to ignore. Because sometimes one of the things that lead the person to speak more or to speak a lot, or many times to say things which are not appropriate or suitable, is the person paying attention to a lot of stuff that perhaps can or should be ignored. And I think that this is a beautiful closure for the class of today, especially on the pasuk that I quoted before, Bechol derachecha da'ehu, that even when it comes to talking, the Musar of today adds one more sentence, which I'm going to say it to you. And it says as follows, the Gemara from Masechet Megillah, Masechet Hagigah, and it says, Afilu siha kala ben adam im ishto. It says even a simple conversation between husband and wife, that is also being recorded. What does it mean? It says, don't think that the words are gone with the wind. Yes, they are gone with the wind, but you know where they are going? They're going to a savings account. And those words can become our worst enemies, God forbid, if they are out of line or inappropriate, or these words can be the ones who brings godliness and kedusha closer to us, as the Musar of today mentioned, miyad shore ruach hakodesh alav. The spirit of kedusha and tahara dwells in the life of the person. Dear Kahal Kadosh, we wish everybody a Chodesh Tov, Besiman Tov. I will be heading back to Florida soon. So Be'ezat Hashem, Beli Neder, we'll be recording live the class.